I think Netflix is very, very clear as an organization that who they are as an organization, and every single employee who works in a Netflix is very, very clear that who we are as an organization and what is it that we want to achieve. And I think that sense of clarity becomes very, very important for an organization to finally succeed. The day or the time when I start seeing a business strategy and then defining an HR strategy out of it, I think that's where it breaks across.
Let's get started with a quick intro so that our audience can get to know you a little bit better, and then let's dive into some questions.
I'm currently the global head of workforce planning and org effectiveness for OLX Group. But that's just a title, as you know, everywhere. It's more of a title. So there's a lot of work that I do around workforce planning, org effectiveness, but also around mergers and acquisitions, HR transformations. Overall, working on new ways of working between the HR business partners, COEs, with the new changing world that we have. And then obviously, as in because I'm working for the OLX Group as a whole, so I'm working across India, Indonesia, Latin America, and then Europe. So those are the various diverse countries that I work across. A bit prior to that is I have a pretty diverse, I would say, fields that I've worked across, starting working in factories to working in strategic HR to working in consulting, and then back into line HR, working across multiple countries. And then yeah, I think that has been really exciting, I would say, journey so far.
Awesome. I really like it. I think one of the reasons why I was very keen to get you on the show is that I think you have the one of the best breadths of experience. So you've had the, factory HR experience, you've had the consulting experience, you have the global experience, you've had a group experience now, and like you rightly said, it's not, the title is just the title, right? There's so much more that everybody has to do on a day-to-day basis. So one thing that I kind of start with is every organization that I come across has varying degrees of the same problem, which is organizational alignment. How do you currently solve for the problem of organizational alignment, and how has your thinking evolved as you've gone through all these experiences?
I think you hit Ali the nail on its head, I would say, because I think one of the major challenges in any organization, be it, and I can name the organization, be it within Siemens that I've been working with, be it even with the government of India that has been working at, and then my current organization that I've been working across, is I think different people and different leaders even has a different view of what the organization wants to achieve across. And I think that becomes very, very important for any organization to succeed across, to have a common frame of reference for everyone. And then that becomes even more important as we go and then trickle down below the organization, because every employee in the organization looks at the organization with a lens of their own, and maybe a lens of their manager in itself. So how do you drill down that particular alignment within the organization? I think one of the fabulous thing that I saw across in OLX that we kept on doing across is is doing a lot of communication on what we as an organization are and what we as an organization stand for. And I think that sets across the presence more than even the business vision I would talk about, even more than the business, I would say, strategy that we lay down across. I think we start from that perspective, that who we are as an organization. And luckily for me, as in all these organizations, be it Siemens or be it OLX, they were very, very clear from a perspective that who we are as an organization. Then comes the more nitty gritty of it, that okay, fine, what will be our long term vision, where do we want to go across, what will be our business strategy, etc. But I think a lot of times, a lot of organizations, especially in the startup world, I would have to say, struggle with is who we are as an organization. Are we an organization who is for our customer? Are we an organization who are for our employees? Are we an organization who is working to make the world better, who is working on sustainability, and so on and so forth? So I think that sense of clarity has to be very, very strongly driven across from the top leadership. And then, yes, and if I see it in my journey to put across your second question, I think you do not realize it in an early part of your career, right? Because and you talked about it, and I talked about my experience when I started off in a factory HR. For me, the world was only the factory that I'm talking about. So everything that happened across was my vision was that particular factory that I'm talking about, and how do I align across every person in the factory. And as you grow up in the organization, and especially it becomes even more difficult when you start taking a global hat and a global cap, because the culture of the different countries start becoming very different, right? And then to still be the same and then say, okay, fine, this is who we are as an organization, becomes very difficult sometimes, I would say. But I think that's the prominent role of the leader and the CEO. And I think if I have to sum it up in the end, is I would define the success of a CEO not based upon the PNL in itself, but about on the basis of the clarity that they have within the organization. I always like to look at it, one of the organization that I always admire when it comes to clarity and in sense that who we are as an organization, and that is Netflix. I think Netflix is very clear as an organization that who they are as an organization, and every single employee who works in a Netflix is very clear that who we are as an organization and what is it that we want to achieve. And I think that sense of clarity becomes very important for an organization to finally succeed.
Okay, so many great things there. So I think first of all, more common in early stage, but also common in larger businesses is there's a. I mean, we don't want to use the word identity crisis, but like there's like a little bit of a confusion about what do we really stand for and why do we exist, right? Do we exist to serve our customers? Do we exist to create efficiency in a specific area? Netflix is the hallmark of how to do it right. So I'll come back to that in a second. I imagine as you go from a factory to, for example, a global role like the one you have at OLX, you're also faced with like matrixed organizations and cross-functional teams and direct lines and dotted lines and whatever it may be. So again, two questions back. One, are like dotted lines or cross-functional teams or global structures an impediment to clarity in the organization, or are they an enhancer? And what to do there? Number one. Number two, like if you had to kind of summarize the Netflix secret into a few lines, what would that be?
Yeah, so let me start with the first one. And that's a difficult one, right, Ali, because there are two sides of every coin in itself, right? So to start with, I think once you start going from, say, a factory setup to a corporate and then into a global setup, it becomes difficult. I would not mince words in saying it becomes difficult to have a very solid line in terms of, and then suddenly having dotted lines, working with functional COEs, working with business leader, working with HR leaders, and so on and so forth. Um, and I think that is where what I have always believed is becomes very important is how crystal clear your communication is with the stakeholders. And I think that becomes very important is you speak your mind out, and then you follow the words that you are saying across. I think one of the biggest challenge is this happens across in the organization is this, say for example, I'm talking to you, Ali, and then I say something to you, but you but you are in your own thinking of what Anshu is saying across. And I think that is the biggest challenge that happens across. I always say to my team as well is it is totally okay, and then there's nothing wrong in it. If you think that you and I have a difference in the opinion, ask once, ask twice, ask thrice, ask four times, till the point of time that you are clear that what you are thinking and what I am thinking is exactly the same thing. And that is exactly what I do with all my stakeholders, and in terms of getting that clarity of alignment, that what they are speaking and what I'm speaking is at the same, is at the same thing, and is at the same level. And then I do not shy about it, right? And in terms of, I think there is no shame in to sort of keep on going and asking people the same stuff again and again till you are clear. The second thing, and that is again a very important thing that happens across is, and in which I talked about in the earlier also, not everyone in your dotted lines, not everyone will have the same vision. And if you see a clash in the vision, it is also your role to bring everyone on this table in itself. So yeah, and bring everyone across, talk to them, talk it out, hash it out. I think it sometimes is just good to have that sort of creative indifference within the team in itself, so that you come up with the best solution. So again, that is why I said is there is no right and then there is no wrong in it. I think people would have different point of opinions, and that is what makes human beings different, right? As in that we all have opinions and we have different opinions, so just bring them together and then talk it out.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. So it gets harder as teams become global and cross-functional, but communication, you just need more communication.
Yeah,
Also, I think the thing that you said, and I think this is like one of those things that's true but not obvious, is that it's totally okay to ask for clarity and continue to ask for clarity until you get it. From a CEO's perspective, the common thing that every CEO does is they say the same thing over and over again, right? They go to a town hall, they go to a department, they go to a team. The message should be the same, the message should be consistent, and it should be boring, right? Almost to the point like, yeah, we're a customer focused organization. Our goal is to do this. And you keep saying it over and over again. I think that's where a lot of people think if you ask the same question again and again, the CEO or the person in charge is going to get annoyed. They actually don't get annoyed. Most of the time, they're like, okay, good. Now the message is sinking in, which is really good. Another, like, so now we're kind of talking about consistency, right? So consistency is an important theme. We're all humans, so everybody perceives things differently. If you look at kind of an organizational plan or a call to action, how do you make sure it stays consistent as it goes through the organization from a planning to an execution implementation stage?
that's not always easy. Let me put it this way: is and so at cost of saying it repetitive across, is it's just not easy. Because again, think of it this way, and then I think that is one of the major challenges in any organization is organization always thinks in silos. Organization does not think in one broad view. A CEO or at the top, as in it's easy to say across. As in, as an organization, I can always say, okay, fine. Hey, listen, as in my goal is or my vision is that I become, as in the best and the most innovative organization in the world. Period. As in that's the vision of the CEO in itself. Now it becomes different for different departments. It becomes different for how a sales team conceive it across. It becomes different how a CFO conceives it across. It becomes difference in terms of how HR conceive it across. And I think how I would look at it is keep on breaking down the top vision in itself into chunks. And in terms of, okay, fine, as in if I'm saying that, okay, fine, I want to become the most innovative or I want to become the most profitable organization in the world, what do you mean when you say I want to become the most innovative and I want to become the most profitable, as an organization in the world? And then start breaking it down into various components in itself. Okay, fine. If this is what we are going across, then what does it mean from a sales or from a growth perspective in itself? What does it mean from a financial perspective in itself? What does it mean in terms of are we looking at customer satisfaction in itself? What does it mean? What does it mean in terms of an employee perspective? So start breaking it down into various components. And I think that is where, as you start, as in those alignments are necessary, right? As in when you break across the overall vision, I would say, or strategy or whatever you call it across for the CEO, you break it at a very, very high level component. And those should be aligned between the CEO and then his or her leadership team. And then you further subdivide it across. So keep on subdividing, and then every time there has to be an alignment with the one below that across. And then there are various ways in doing it across, right? As in there are organization who do it by, say, MBOs. There are organizations who do it by very, very informal discussions within the leadership team. There are organizations who do it by sort of giving across a lot of flexibility to people down below, and so on and so forth. So I think that's it. It also depends upon the culture of the organization, right? Because if you look at a manufacturing plant, they would want to hit it right. And then I come from in my initial days from a manufacturing plant. They will tell you, okay, fine. And then it is required also, right? As in, if I say that, okay, fine, I want to be an organization which should have zero EHS, and then or zero accident case, you need to have your SOPs and you need to have your targets very, very well defined. And that is how it will be. At the paradigm opposite will be, say, a very, very innovative organization, right? They would need to give that flexibility across. So while they can give very, very high level principles, but have a very, very strong alignment with the first line on the principles in itself, but also give that freedom across to those departments in itself, in terms of defining those principles into targets, and what does it mean for their different team. So that is why it depends upon also the kind of culture of the organization that we are working in, and then how do you translate it across.
And I think you're 100% right. It changes. It's very hard to do. In the context of my journey specifically, I look very deeply at the interplay between the CEO, the HR, and the finance function. And I can tell you this, that if everyone is doing their job really well, they are actually being pulled away from each other, right? So if there's an HR person and their goal is to do zero EHS, for example, right? Zero employee health and safety incidents, right? There's a finance person whose goal is to basically be the most capital efficient company around. And there's a CEO who wants to get things done quickly. These are all trade-offs against each other, right? If I want to do it really quickly, I may have to cut some corners on the employee health and safety side. If I want to do things in a very capital efficient way, I may need to slow down my deployment of capital. So, I think that every stakeholder has some priorities that are common and some priorities that are unique to their function or their role. And recognizing and understanding them is very challenging. So I guess the question I have for you is, as you think about strategic planning or workforce planning that involves both the HR side and the finance side, what are the major challenges that you see in practice? Right? I mean, academics will talk about a lot of stuff, but like on a day-to-day basis on the ground, what does that look like?
Traditionally, it is very easy, right? As in, we always said, okay, fine, now the role of HR is becoming more strategic. We are coming on the table now. We have a room in the boardroom. That's the most common thing that is being said across. But at the same point of time, what is also being said in the same breath is, hey, we have a business strategy. Now you have become strategic enough, so translate into HR strategy. And that is the point of time when I stop and then I say, hey, not being done. The day, and I think that is where to answer your question, what you are saying more from an operational perspective, the day, or the time when I start seeing a business strategy and then defining an HR strategy out of it, I think that's where it breaks across. I think an HR strategy has to be integrated within the business strategy. It cannot be that there is a business strategy and then we start making HR strategy. They have to sort of mirror across each other. There will be HR decisions that are being taken, because of which your business strategy in itself also has to change. But how a lot of organization, and I will also put it across, that we as an HR fraternity also work is we say, okay, fine, business strategy set in stone. Now let's make an HR strategy out of it. And that's where our biggest challenge start coming across, right? As in, that's where things start breaking it. So I think the first point in itself, which I look at, and whenever I have worked with businesses, I've always said that, hey, if you want me to help you with your HR strategy, let me be part of your business strategy discussion as well. You cannot expect that you make a business strategy and then make an HR strategy. Coincidentally, and this is a funny one, is I have asked once a CEO, where I said, okay, fine, you have made a business strategy and then you are asking me to make an HR strategy. Do you make a business strategy and then you ask your CFA that, okay, now make your financial strategy out of it? You never do that, right? You would have never heard any organization who would have said, let's make a business strategy and now let's start thinking and then thinking about P&L. Then how could you do that for your HR strategy? Because if you do not have your HR strategy laid out, as in your business strategy will start crumbling. So I think that is the starting point. I think the second important point, which I have seen in a lot of organization, and this has to do sometimes, and then I would also be very blunt, is that sometimes I'm very, very super critical of the HR function, because I'm myself in HR function, and I start looking, scrutinizing it across, is I think we are also comfortable sometimes, right? And in terms of saying, okay, fine, as in let's do what is required of us. As in we are a people person. Let's talk to people. And I'm sorry. I think at this point of time, if I have to go back and then hire across the team, as in if the team does not understanding business, you are not supposed to be in HR as well, because in the end, as in that is what is important. And that is where, from an operational perspective, how I have looked at it always is take the business strategy, look at the financial aspect of the business strategy, start breaking down those financial goals into what does it mean from a people strategy perspective. So for example, my aim is to grow from, as in increase my revenue by 10% while increase my EBITDA by 5% year over year. Now, in order to grow my revenue by 10% year on year, as in what are the different roles that I have, and how are those roles going to impact across on my revenue, and what are the roles that impact directly my EBITDA, and then look at the KPIs related to all of those, and then start making planning. And I think that is the beauty, right? As in when you start talking to business in their business language, hey, you do not do this, this is going to happen to your PNL, this is going to happen to your profit and loss, or this is what is going to happen to your marketing spend, and then so on and so forth. I think that is the most important aspect. And then that is how I always look at it from an operational strategy perspective. Is two sides. One is give them the current picture and the current mirror, look at their business strategy for the future, and then start breaking it down, and then say, okay, fine. And you said it also, Ali, right? As in there are always decisions that you have to take in, and then there are ups and downs, and you have to sort of weigh it across. And then you give options to the leaders that, okay, fine, you do these things, this is how your business will get impacted. You do these things, this is how your business is getting impacted, and now develop a strategy out of it.
The one thing that I find is consistent. So in my journey, I get to speak to a lot of CEOs. I get to speak to a lot of HR leaders. Get to speak to a lot of finance people. The one thing that every CEO will consistently say is, I want my HR leader to be a lot more strategic, right? My HR leader is not strategic. And I don't know if it's a people problem. I don't know if it's a system problem. So the need is there, right? The the traditional HR role, and I mean, I want to ask you this, right? So the traditional HR role was very administrative, right? You have these leaves, you have these people violating policy, these people got into a fight in the canteen, stuff like that. And now what you're talking about is completely like new age, like, wait a second, we want the HR person to build a business strategy. So a lot of, traditional CEOs and HR leaders would be like, what is this guy talking about? Like, this is crazy, right? So what does a successful, like, top 1% HR leader look like in 2024, 25? What are the skill sets they need to have? And what do they need to kind of leave behind from their legacy?
So I think first of all, as in first and foremost, and I think I talked a bit of it in your last question as well. I think I would not even call an HR person an HR person. I would call an HR person a business person. I think it is I think inherently how we have coined across the HR term in itself is that, okay, fine, this is an HR leader. This is a soft, empathetic leader who would stay in the organization, would do good for everyone. Um, Sorry, but an HR function is not an is not an not, is not a function which is just existing for the betterment of the society. Yes, it is there, and then that is where the organizations also are looking at it. But I think the HR function exists because the business exists, right? And if the HR leader do not understand the business, I think that is doomsday for the organization, I would say. I coincidentally, again, an example is when I passed out of MBA, and I was talking to a lot of my folks who passed out of MBA as well. I think something which the FMCG organization does very, very well is the HR folks who gets hired in FMCG organization, the first 3 months these people are doing sales. So someone who gets hired across in Pepsi, they go and then sell Pepsi bottles going into each of these market. And that makes you understand what is the pain of the business, how do you run the business, and how do you sell the business. So I think the number one competency for any business HR leader is to understand the business. And it's an easy one to say, right? As in, you could go to any HR, they would say, yeah, we understand the business very well. But it's not as simple. As in, I ask very simple question to any business HR leader that I meet across. Okay, fine. If you understand the business, tell me what was your revenue, how did your P&L, which was the competitor that you lost, your shares across, what has been your total shares, and then so on and so forth. So you need to be on the top of your game. If even if you do not have, in an ideal world, you should have the same level of business understanding that a CEO or at least a CFO has. But even if you do not have it, at least have it as much as your business unit head has, the understanding of business. So I think that is one. The second one, I would say, very very important, and I think the world is just changing across as well, is comfort with numbers. I think the more I talk about it, the more it becomes obvious, is there has to be a certain comfort with number. Why are CHROs, and this is traditionally that I've seen, CHROs and then CFOs have always been at loggerheads, right? And in a lot of organizations that I've worked for or I've looked at, is that they have been at loggerheads. It's because they both speak two different languages. And I think it is very very important that both of them start speaking the same language. And then what better language than to speak the language of number? Because then, what I told you earlier as well, is there is no ambiguity, right? As in, when you talk about numbers, there is no ambiguity that I am saying five and you are understanding eight. No, if I am saying five, you would also understand five. The third one, and this is something that has been traditionally with HR, but it has to be more and more obvious within HR, is how comfortable you are dealing with change and how comfortable you are driving the organization towards change. As in, we live in a world, right? As in, where as in, what was true yesterday is not true today, and then what is true today will not be true in next 3 or 4 days in itself. And how do you navigate the entire world through these change models in itself? And the fourth one, I would say, is and I think I always say this across to people who are new in the organization, is, as an HR folk, are you okay to let it go? As in, sometimes as an HR, we want to control certain things. We say, okay, fine, no, no, no. If I'm not fully involved in, say, in say, a performance management cycle in itself. If I do not sit in every performance management cycle, it will not go through. My recommendation always to them is, why are you fishing for the manager? Why don't you teach the manager to fish for themselves? As in, they are eventually responsible for their people. And I think that is where I think it becomes very very important for HR leaders of the future, is also to let it go. Let the business leaders, let the business managers make mistake, and it is your role to then intervene at the right point of time, and then keep on correcting the culture of the organization on the way. And I think, do not hold back and then say, hey, if I let this go. And then I think that is one of the things in an HR, right? As in, we, and a lot of people, especially who have left the HR world with the administrative, is where they think that if I let this go, then what is my role going to become across? What is, as in, it will become redundant. As in, I think what I say always across is, I think, how I would define the success of an HR leader is, if the HR leader is not required tomorrow by the business. That's for me, as simple as in, if you do not need an HR tomorrow, I think you have done brilliantly as an HR leader, and then you move on to new and better things in your life.
So many great things there, right? Like HR and finance speak different languages. Wouldn't it be great if they could both be a little bit empirical? Teaching people how to fish, how Procter and Gamble, Unilever, all of these people actually put people out into the field before they get into the HR desk, so that they actually understand what the business does. And then I think sort of numeracy, if we can use that word, right? Like understanding the numbers of what makes the business tick is no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. So I guess the question, uh, and I 100% agree with you, right? Because I say this all the time, right? That HR speaks French and finance speaks German. And you really kind of, it's kind of like a bit of a mess, right? Because they're both coming from a good place. But at the end of the day, nobody understands what the other person is saying, and it creates a lot of friction and frustration. So I guess if there was such a thing as a perfect HR and finance planning tool where one side would get the other and the other side would get the latter, what would it do? I mean, you can be as imaginative as possible, right? You've got tons of experience here. What do you think?
I think one of the biggest challenge that happens across is, do we have the perfect visualization in itself? Because as you said, as in while these two talk about different languages, do they also have the right visualization in place? I think that is the key. But I think before even we go to the tool in itself, I think there are some ground, or I would say housekeeping stuff, that has to be in place in any organization. What are the right set of business KPIs? What are the right set of HR KPIs? How do these KPIs talk to each other? I think that is one portion that has to be done across, from a initial, I would say, housekeeping perspective. We keep on hearing, right, as in at this point of time, and I think it has, I feel as in it has started going into a world where it has, while I believe that it's very important, but it has also become a fad where people start talking about skill based organization, and how we could develop across a skill based organization, and so on and so forth. And I think that also becomes, as in, how do you bring all of those components together? So I think that is one piece of it, and I will not go into detail of what could some of those KPIs, and then what could some of those data be, but have the housekeeping right in the organization. Then comes on the top of, I would say, the tools that we are talking about. And I think it is important that we look at the entire, not the employee life cycle, but the entire business life cycle, and then see to it that what is required at each of these point of time. At any flash of moment of time, is there a tool that could give across an accurate prediction of the KPIs that exist across? So for example, if one of the KPIs is employee turnover, or I would not say employee turnover, but I would say business revenue per employee. Can I have it at any point of time? Can I have it? What is the average sales that is being done across by every employee in the organization? Can I have what is my employee cost as a percentage of revenue that is going on? How is it trending over and over again? What is the correlation between, say, your attrition that is happening in the organization versus, and engagement scores that is running in the organization, vis-a-vis your profitability that is running across in the organization, and so on and so forth. So I think how I would look at it is, again, as I said, as in from three perspective. One is, can the tool show me where I am as an organization and what has been happening in the past in the organization? Can the tool use those data points, and in terms of predicting what will happen in the future based upon my business strategy? So if my business strategy is there, can it already predict across that, okay, fine, if you keep on doing what you are doing, this is what you will be getting in the future? And then finally, can I tweak those data points and say, okay, fine, no, let me move this up and then down, let me change my maybe organization skill set perspective, or maybe my comp data perspective, etc., and how will that get impacted across? So I think there is a lot of correlation that needs to happen across between the business data, the HR data. Show the data as of present, show the data, what is the correlation that is happening across these data, and how it will be going across, and then finally look at how tweaking across some of these data points, both from a business perspective and from a HR perspective, could essentially help business meet the final goal. So I think those are the three portions that I would look at any tool.
So you have your visualizations, but they start with good housekeeping on what is it that you're trying to do. Those are lead their way into tools which are kind of over the business life cycle. So for example, when you look at someone, not only do you look at kind of where they sit in the organization or what they get paid, but also like what is revenue per employee. And then finally, how do you kind of do some correlation where you say, if we move this variable, what happens to the next, right? So a lot of integration of HR data, financial data, and sort of what you would call like business KPIs.
I was having exactly, as in, so you take the business data, you take the HR data, you look at the past regression, etc., look at the KPIs, etc. And we are living in a world, right, as in we have chat GPTs, and then we have whatnot AI engines that are developing across. So how do
Yeah.
you utilize all of that to also get meaningful information? Because, yeah, as in, look at it this way, I would say, Elise, is the traditional role that even HR, and I would not say even HR, as in even the CFOs have been playing across, as in, can it not be done by a simple AI chatbot in the future? Yes, it can be. So now I think the role of the tool will be to help across these progression that we have been doing. And I think the role of the business leaders and the HR leaders would be start making intelligent decision. And I will emphasize on the word intelligent decision because there will be scenario playing going on, right, with the tools that are
Hmm.
happening across. Now the role of the HR would be to take the help of these tools to decide what is the most intelligent way or what is the most probable way and decision that has to be taken.
Lovely. Okay, so basically, you answered my next question, right? So my next question was like, in this age of AI, how does the role evolve, right? How does the role of the HR or the CEO evolve? And I think what I heard, and you can correct me, is like you have this, let's say call it a chat interface. It could be a Siri interface, because some kind of AI agent. The AI agent goes and crunches all the numbers, does all the math, collects all the data from all the, saves you like hours and hours of data entry so that you can say, okay, if I were to give everybody a 20% raise but double my target, what does that look like? And it crunches all the numbers for you, does the math for you. But then at the end of the day, the leadership team, their job is continually getting more and more focused into intelligent decision making, right? Making decisions, learning from it, and then adjusting their strategy. In that environment where software is eating the world, it is even more important for the HR leader and all business leaders, frankly, to become great at decision making and to let software do the execution, the stuff like that.
You crystallize it pretty well. How I look at it, Ali, is let's look at it. Any business, there will be three levers, right? You have the business drivers that drives the business. Then there are strategic parameters, and then there are environmental parameters. Now, what an AI could do is just take work of the business drivers because we know how the business driver will be to some extent look at a strategic parameter. But the role of HR and the business leaders would be to feed in how the strategic parameter will work on, and the important one where AI will not be able to play a part, but it is totally the business leaders, is to look at environmental parameters. So look at what happens if, say, a COVID hits across in the future. What happens if there is a Ukraine and Russia war that happens across in the future? What happens if there is some other kind of calamity comes into picture? And those are the decisions that will not be taken across by AI, right? But those are also the decision that has to be taken at a very very fast pace by the business leader. So that is why I say business driver, very very simple, can be taken across. Strategic parameters, the business leaders and the HR leaders, etc., feed in information in there, look at the various scenarios, but they need to also look at the environmental parameters and see how my surroundings are changing, because that becomes very very important for the leaders of the future to look into.
Business parameters, strategic parameters, environmental variables. Obviously, anything that is consistent and predictable, we can use AI for. Anything that is changing all the time is kind of where you need to make intelligent decision making, but you still don't need to do the math. You can say, here's a what if scenario of a COVID wave, whatever wave we're on now, right? Or here's a strategic what if scenario of, let's say, what if the cost of our raw materials doubles because of some conflict in some region? So I think the challenge has been is that business conditions are changing so quickly that to be able to do like a detailed analysis and do all the math on them would take several months of work. We don't have those months, right? COVID hit, we had to kind of make some decisions very, very fast, right? So I think the one thing that's happening as well is that software is enabling us to react to changes a lot faster. Those changes are also happening a lot faster, right? So it's not like you can make an annual plan and then go off and then come back a year later. In this environment, it is even more important because, like, now you are, I guess, as a leadership team, you are being rewarded for your decision making, intelligent decision making capability. And a lot of, particularly HR leaders, when I speak to them privately, they'll say, you know what, I need to build a better relationship with the CEO, or I need to build a better relationship with my management team. I feel like a lot of times it's like us versus them kind of happening. So I guess what are you? You are the sort of, you're a bit of a unicorn, and I don't want no 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 no, not in a bad way, like a good positive unicorn. um, but like, you're an HR leader who understands and embraces the numbers and the numeracy aspect of it. I guess, what advice do you have for slightly traditional HR leaders to become a better equipped for the changes that lie ahead, better build a relationship with their CEO or their board, or just managing the relationship between finance, HR, and the CEO?
I think first one would be Ali is be open to change. I think that is the most important one. I never have to comment as in the CHROs who would have come back and then talked to you and then said to you that okay fine, I believe and I know that I do not have a good relationship with my CEO and then I need to do something. I think half of the job is done. I think the bigger problem is just a lot of them would not even accept this across. So as long as they start accepting, I think that would be the first thing that I would say is accept it across. And I think there's nothing wrong in it. As in that is how traditionally HR organizations have grown across. As in we were supposed to do administrative job. As in if you would have been talking to maybe 9 years or 8 years before now with me, as in I was stuck in a factory, as in my role was make sure that there are appointment letters that are being delivered, make sure that Anshu, as in there is nothing happening on the ground floor, and that was my role, and there was nothing wrong in it. It is supposed to be done. It is still supposed to be done. But as long as we know that the world around us is changing, and then we need to accept it across, I think that is one half of the work done across. The second one would be, I would say, is do not be afraid to ask for help in itself, and you would be surprised that there are lots and lots of people who are ready to help across once we ask for help. I think every organization that I have joined across, when I joined new, I think my first 1 month of the organization is not meeting anyone with HR, but meeting everyone with the business and everyone with finance. Jokingly, as in it was always said across, and in a lot of my organization that I've joined across is are you part of the HR team or are you not part of the HR team, and then you are part of the other team around. But I think that is important, right? As in every good HR leader and every good HR manager that I've worked across, they have been very very close and have been having discussion with the business and asked help from the business that hey, as in this is where I'm struggling, I'm not understanding these jargons of say the business world that you're talking about, help me out. So I think that will be the second bit of advice from my side to them. The third will be the world is changing, right, Ali? As in we talked about AI, we talked about chat GPT, and I think as in a lot of it we did not know, forget about years, as in sometimes even months before we did not talk about as in knew about it. But there are young kids who are coming out of college who know it intuitionally, and then they do not need to learn it across. And I think that is where something that I also incorporated in one of my earlier organization is just something like a reverse mentoring, etc., that happens across in the organization. It really helps across. There's nothing wrong in it having reverse mentoring where these new age kids with new age fonts, etc., are coming in and teaching across these as a leader. So that will be my third piece. The fourth piece, which I earlier also said, and I will say it again: do not be afraid of numbers. As in they are there to help you across. As in just embrace it. I think it's very very important to embrace across and then say hey, as in you know what, as in maybe you know a lot of people, and this is a funny thing, and maybe it is in India and then not at the other part of the world, is a lot of people say hey, you got into HR because you were maybe you were afraid of the numbers, you were not good with the numbers, and that's why you decided to get into HR. But that's not true. As in HR today will have to embrace numbers, otherwise there is no future for the HR.
I think it's not just India, by the way. I think the stereotype of an HR person is that they don't like numbers and they don't want to do numbers, right? And I think it's no longer an option, right? It's no longer like, how like nowadays you cannot not have a cell phone. I guess you can if you are like very very rare, super rich, or super, but like most people have a cell phone, right? And I think numeracy is a skill that I think every business leader needs to have. whether it's marketing, HR, finance, ops, tech. And I think the thing that's true is that there has been the least amount of investment into improving numeracy of HR teams. You 100% right that the newer grads or people who are coming out of college, they are a great opportunity to reverse mentor in some cases, to say, hey, look, I think and I think there's some nuance there, right? We don't want our HR person to become a data scientist or some data. We just need them to be able to dive in, like you said, and be comfortable with numbers and say, look, if we give everybody a 5% increase across the board versus if we give our high performers a 7% increase and everybody else we give them a cost of living adjustment, this is what the numbers look like. They should be able to run the numbers very quickly. Not talking my own book, but like one of the things that HR leaders really like about our product is that we do all that math instantly. You move a box from here to there, all the math is done, right? The I'm doing this in reverse order, but like fully understanding the business by going out into the business is super important, because you're 100% right. 10 years ago, more consistency and compliance were the key traits that were rewarded in an HR leader, HR executive. I think that is still true, but a lot of it is being automated with HRIS systems, etc. You don't need to now like manually tally up timesheets anymore, because there's a system, there's a key card, people punch in, punch out. What's being added to this consistency and compliance skill set is the strategic and the intelligent decision making. And I think being open to change is the secret to success, because the world is changing so fast that if we can just keep up or even try to keep up, because some of these changes are happening so quickly, having solid numeracy, having solid understanding of the business and the fundamentals of the business is already enough to be able to move forward and be really differentiated as an HR leader.
Yeah, it's not a wishful thinking. I would say it's no longer how I would look at it, Ali, is this is no longer a wishful thinking, right? This is now an essence of survival for HR as well, as in the things that I talked about, as in be it change, be it data numeracy, be it business. These are no longer good to have. These are now must haves for any organization. And as you rightly said, and I would the only thing that I would add is you hit the nail on the head when you said you do not need to be a data scientist. You do not want HR as data scientist. You just need, and I would again repeat it across, you need HR folks who are comfortable with number. A CFO comes in and starts talking about numbers, or a CEO comes starts talking about the number. We as an HR folk, we do not need to run away from it. We need to have absorb it across and see how it makes sense for us as an HR function, and what we could do with those numbers, and then look at the casualty of those numbers from an employee perspective, and then give the advice back in a numerical context. And then I would keep on saying, and then connected with the first question that you asked about, as long as everyone is talking the same language, it becomes easier, right?
Okay, so I know you have a ton of experience across workforce planning, structuring organizations, M&A, So, for a lot of people, these are like buzzwords or terms, but they don't really know what that means. So I think in a very like simple, explain to me like I'm five, like when people say workforce planning, what does that mean in very simple terms?
Yeah, I would try to, as in make it very very simple, so that it looks to people that everyone can do workforce planning. So let me make it as simple as that. So what is workforce planning? I will look at it from four-step perspective. So the first step is you look at your current organization on different dimensions. So you look at how my demographic is, how my age dimension is, how my attrition is happening across, and then start looking and then cutting and then dividing it into different portions. So look at it, what my current organization is, and again, so the additional layer or the additional stuff over it, and then you keep on improving, right? As in workforce planning is a very very, I would say, step by step process. You will not reach the golden standard of workforce planning on the first day itself, but in a golden standard you would also be able to show across your business parameters together with your employee data. So that will be more down the line. But to start with, you could start it really simple. But the first step being as is, as in what your current organization is. The second step would be forget about everything. If your organization continues to be as it is today, then what is that is required across from an employee perspective, so which we typically call across as a supply side analysis. How does your supply change in the future? You will have people retiring across, you will have attrition happening across, and so on and so forth. So what will be the supply of your employees? So if your business neither shrinks down nor goes up but remains flat, you will keep on needing the same number of people, right? And you do not have any productivity improvement, but you will still have people going out of the organization. So what is happening across? Now comes the interesting part, is now start looking at what your demand would be. Now there here again, as in, and that's where I liked what you said. And then I think that is the crux of workforce planning, what you said earlier. Start looking at what are the business strategy and keep on asking what ifs questions. So keep on asking, what if this happens across, then what will I need in workforce? What if this happens, then what will I need in workforce? So make your demand structures in itself. So what will be the demand? Now you have the supply, you have the demand, you will get the gap, and then start making your people strategy. What will you do in terms of buy, build, demand, buy, build, borrow, etc.? What will you do? Now, this is the most simplest way of looking at strategic workforce planning. You can complicate it as much as you want, and then you can make it as simple as you want it across. And that's the trick. And that is where I said, and I will link it again, Ali, to it, and a question earlier that you asked across. Now, everything that I told you, this can be done by a simple tool, right? It can be a good tool that it could do across. Unfortunately, I would also say, is you do not have the perfect tool of workforce planning at this point of time existing in the market, and at the cost of making a lot of people upset. But I would say it across as a workforce planning. I have never found a tool which is a perfect workforce planning tool existing across. But I'm hopeful that there will be something that will come across soon, and this could be done across by a tool, exactly as you said, or say, for example, your tool that you have been trying to develop, as in that's something that could be done by it. But the questions, the what if question, who ask across those what if question, that is the role of the HR leaders of the future, wherein they start talking about those what if questions. They start discussing across, hey, is an 8% productivity good enough with the kind of things that we are doing, or should it be 10%, or should it be 12% productivity improvement, and so on and so forth? Should I do my analysis on the basis of a job role, or should I do it on the basis of skills that exist in my organization, or should I do it at the level of a job family? So those questions are the things where HR interventions will always be required across. And then you start making use of intelligent tools. But in a nutshell, and I hope I did not overcomplicate it across, but this is what workforce planning is. Split it into four pieces.
I think the most important thing that you're kind of highlighting is that instead of having a very linear plan and saying, oh, we will expand next year and then we will double our workforce and then we will expand another time and we will double our workforce again. You want to have multiple what if scenarios where you kind of say, look, if we optimize one variable, if you think about it like a Rubik's Cube, right? Like you change something here, everything else changes too. You cannot be oblivious to it anymore, right? And you're 100% right that the perfect tool doesn't exist today. Part of me starting this business is because I had this frustration around like, why are we looking at this in such a myopic way, right? We are changing this thing here and we are just drawing the line out because that's what our spreadsheet lets us do. What about all this other stuff, right? So I think we are still years away from getting to a perfect product or perfect tool. At the moment, I think what we are quite proud of is that we have built a translation layer between finance and HR. HR moves boxes around, dotted lines, locations, comp. Finance understands it in their language and they can say, no, I don't get it. I mean, I don't agree. I get it, but I totally don't agree because we don't have the budget or XYZ. And then they can be a conversation where there can be alignment.
I was just saying that one of the things that I liked, and that still does not exist in a lot of tool, but it is required across, is And this correlates to the first thing, and then when we started off this discussion, a workforce planning is not that you make the business strategy and then you make workforce planning out of it. While you are making your workforce planning, you are evaluating the demand side, your entire business strategy itself could change. And I can give you an example is in one of the organization we were looking at, as in ramping up and growing the organization, opening up factory, etc. And then that is what came across with one of the, as an organization that I was working with. And then we suddenly realized, or the business realized, okay, fine, these are the number that of people that are required across. We did workforce planning and so on and so forth. And then we realized that this is the location where we will not find across these people at all. Now we went back to the drawing board, because now there were two things, and then we started discussing it with the business. Is, if it is good enough and if it makes sense for from a supply chain management perspective, that this is the only location, then let's look at different model. Can we hire, say for example, blue collar workforce here, but white collar workforce from every elsewhere, as in give them a remote kind, or maybe look at their compensation differently, and so on and so forth. But then you have to go back and then start working on the business strategy, because maybe it becomes too costly in itself, and you need to change the location. And that is the beauty, right? Because if it does not get integrated, you will end up with your business strategy, and you decide with your people strategy, and then you decide, yeah, it cannot be done, and then the business will blame HR, and HR will blame the business, and both of them will go back to the CFO for asking for more money, and CFO would say nothing more, as in this is all that I have. I think there's nothing more in the PNL. So that's why it is very, very important that this becomes integrated. That was the only point that I wanted to meet across, because everyone still believes I make a business strategy and then let's make a workforce planning strategy.
I think that the joke or the thing that a lot of our customers or people who I talk to will say is like, we go through this whole planning process and, we run around and everybody's doing meetings and approvals and whatever. But everybody knows that the minute we put the pencils down, it's out of date. It's gone, right? Like we're doing this exercise because we do it every year, but like it's not truly reflective of neither the business strategy or the execution of that business strategy, because you are basically making a business strategy and now you're trying to force fit some plan which is more of a resultant vector of your business strategy. What you need to do is you need to say, as a business, I want to do this. Do I have the right leadership to be able to do these things? Do we have the right teams under those leadership teams to do those things? Can we afford all of those build, buy, sell when it comes to a people perspective? And can we execute on those, right? And then as you start to do it, you realize, oh, this location doesn't have this kind of worker. Then how do you adjust your plan? Because if you continue on your existing plan, it's a disaster. A thought prompt for you, right? Like we've talked a lot about HR leaders, what they need to do, what they need to evolve to, etc. Let's say you're at a conference, you're in Vegas, there is this giant billboard that you can write anything on. Okay. The conference is for all the HR practitioners, so there's 30, 50,000 people there. What do you write on it? Like what's the message that you want to give off to everybody in the fraternity?
I would say, Ali, what I've been saying, as in time and time again, and at the cost of repeating it across. As in for me, as in for HR fraternity, the statement is very, very simple: is know your business, be open to change, embrace numbers. That's simple as that. I do not want to think as in these are the three things for me.
Know your business, be open to change, embrace numbers. That's amazing. Thank you very much. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I had a feeling it was going to be great. I think it turned out to be even better. How can people find you if somebody wants to get in touch with you to ask you for an opinion, feedback, etc.? What's the best way to get in touch?
So for me, as in the best way to get in touch is look me up on LinkedIn, and then connect with me on LinkedIn. As in, I think that's good or bad, I do not know, but that is the only social network that I use. There is absolutely no other social network where you would be able to entice any feedback from me. But it's very simple, as in, and look for Kumar Anshu, and then you will be able to find me. I am always open to talk to people who want to change the way HR is perceived. I think that is my passion, and I think there is just so much for HR to add value to the business. We have not yet, touched or scratched the surface, I would say, of what an HR could do for the business.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. There's a lot of stuff going on. So thank you for sharing your time, your insights with us.